Skyrim is not a flawless game. We all know this. There are multiple issues, and today we are focusing on two such areas: the general item situation and the many flaws within its economy system. While playing the game, one of the things that annoyed me the most was Skyrim's economy system, particularly picking up and selling items. You see, the problem has roots in the horrible item situation, which is what I'm going to focus on. A popular trope to open world RPGs that has arguably become even more prevalent in later games is filling it up with useless items, trinkets and consumables that you will never use or even look at more than once. There are so many items scattered around the world that each one becomes less special. Like, you do an epic quest and receive your reward, and it's a cool enchanted weapon. You should feel happy and accomplished, but it is hard to do so when there are about 1,000,000 of these and they are almost identical to normal weapons. These problems accelerate when there is a max carrying capacity. You see, because of how Skyrim works, you will pick up absurd quantities of items. Whenever you get a better weapon, the old one remains in your inventory and takes up space. The endless amounts of consumables for very specific situations that you never end up actually using, quest items, books, and other random objects that are littered all over the map starts to fill up your carrying capacity, which is not what you want to happen. In Skyrim, every time you reach that limit, you get over encumbered. This disables fast travel and running. This is also signified by this death sentence in the top left corner of your screen. I call it a death sentence because it means the only way you can move is by walking, and in Skyrim, walking is ridiculously slow. Look at the difference between normal running and walking here. Remember that the world is huge, and you spend a lot of time traveling around. Imagine how tedious, annoying, and frankly unnecessary this mechanic is while trying to get around the map.
Gotta go fast, gotta go fast, gotta go fast, too fast, too fast, faster, faster.
Well, it is fairly obvious that you aren't going to win any races like this, or be able to travel efficiently in general. You will need to sell your items. You would expect this to be a fairly quick and efficient way to lighten the weight in your inventory, but no, it is designed to be as monotonous as possible. Let me give you an example. You're out exploring, delving into dungeons, harming civilians, chilling with the boys, or just roaming around. Then suddenly, you see the death sentence while picking up a new item. Now, you could just drop it on the ground, but then you won't get any sort of value from it, which is the main point of loot. So, to get some sort of benefit from all of the waste you have stocked up in your inventory, you are looking for somewhere to sell it. Depending on your situation, this could be really annoying. If you're in a dungeon or somewhere where you won't be able to fast travel for some time, you are forced to drop something. This kind of defeats the purpose of a dungeon, as you cannot pick up any loot or treasure anymore. Whenever you are close to the limit, you are forced to use a lot of time just managing your inventory and deciding what you want to keep and what you should throw away. It is boring and it takes time away from the actual game. Now, assuming you're out in the open and you can actually fast travel, this is what you've got to do. You'll have to find a merchant who is willing to buy everything, because most merchants are annoyingly picky and only purchase items from very specific categories. So let's say you decide to go to the trader in Riverwood and click on the map. Half of the time you will have to wait because it's night when the shops are all closed. In general, waiting in Skyrim makes no sense. Time does not seem to do anything. Let's say you wait for a full 24 hours. In most instances, NPCs are literally at the same exact spots doing the exact same thing. and nobody thinks it's weird that you just stood there for literal hours doing nothing. The fact that you can wait anywhere for hours does not make any sense. It only exists to bypass a few things in the game. Well, anyways, after a little bit of waiting for daytime, you can actually start with a business. You walk up to this NPC, and the moment you interact, they hit you with the same dialogue every single time without fail.
Some may call this junk. Me, I call them treasures.
Next, you try to maneuver this disaster of an item menu. Usually, you have so much varied loot and garbage that you will want to sell 90% of everything in your inventory. However, there is not an option to sell all or select multiple items, or perhaps select the 10% you do want to keep and delete everything but that. No, of course, you are forced to scroll through all of the items and carefully click your way through the entire menu screen. But do you want to know the best part? Merchants have limited gold. And not only do they have limited gold, all vendors who are willing to buy anything, not just specific categories, have a base level of gold at 750. This is nothing. You'll be walking in to get some coin, and sometimes you'll only be able to sell around 5 items at max before they've already run out of money. The NPC then takes 48 hours to reset their amount of gold back up to around 750. Which means that after every 5th item you get rid of, you have to use almost an entire minute in between waiting for the character to magically refill their amount of gold. You end up spending more time waiting for the opportunity to sell items than actually selling them, which is a chore anyways. To be fair, there are ways to increase their gold. You can level up the speech skill tree, and if you get all the perks up to Master Trader, you will be able to increase any merchant's gold with 1,500 more permanently. This still does not solve the problem, however, as you have to grind a skill tree just to be allowed to sell a few more items than normally before going outside to wait another 48 hours. It's ridiculous. These main flaws plague the item system of Skyrim. There are too many items. There is a max carrying capacity. Finding a merchant who is willing to buy your items is a challenge. The fact that you are required to take over minute-long breaks in between selling a few items, and that the entire selling process is slow and tedious. It can take up to 20 minutes, and that's just to get rid of your deadweight. One could make the counter-argument to this entire video that it's easy enough to just not pick up items, or just don't bother to sell them, when you can easily drop them at the ground instead. But that begs the question, at that point, why is it there? The entire purpose of looting dungeons, finding treasure, and discovering items is to make money. You pick up rare items to sell them, you gather the valuables to get something out of it. If the player feels like it's not worth it to pick up items in your game, or feels more inclined to leaving it on the ground, then it has no reason to be there. It is also kind of the same problem with the max carrying capacity. It has no good reason to be there. I've only really ever heard 2 reasons for its existence, none of which are good. Number 1. It's more realistic. For some reason, some people think adding this mechanic makes the game realistic. The issue with this logic is that Skyrim is not realistic in this regard anyways. Most RPGs are not. Adding a limit to how many items you can carry like this does not make it more realistic. How come my character can hold this many items without a care in the world, as if he's not holding anything? However, when he picks up a single potato, he is suddenly over-encumbered. When my character is already carrying 10 weapons, 3 armor sets, and all of the interior in a house, you might as well let him carry endless amounts. It's not like it breaks my immersion to be able to carry unlimited items when it's already unrealistic. What breaks my immersion is picking up a vegetable, which turns my character effectively immobile, forcing me to spend ridiculous amounts of time selling dragon scales to normal shopkeepers, and in between every item, having to wait a whole 48 hours outside their goddamn door without moving a centimeter. And after those 48 hours, they get their gold back without having any business whatsoever. I should know, because I just spent 2 24-hour cycles creeping outside their shop. The second argument I've heard for why we should have a max carrying capacity is that being able to hold unlimited amounts of items would immediately cause a headache trying to navigate the inventory. This is seemingly a good reason, because it's definitely hard enough to navigate the inventory in its current state, and would have become even worse. However, this could easily be worked around by creating an inventory where you can search for items, use different filters, have more specific categories, and being able to change what items should be sorted by. You can without much problem create an efficient and overall better way of managing the inventory. For example, instead of just having a parallel, one should be able to sort by light armor, heavy armor, other clothing, from lightest to heaviest, different parts of what you're wearing. Would it really be that hard to create a more user-friendly way to navigate your inventory? For the end, I have saved the most important part. The solution. How do we solve this conundrum? Okay, so first and foremost, get rid of carrying capacity. Be gone. It's unnecessary and flawed. I believe the best way to handle this is to copy the game Dark Souls. In Dark Souls, you can hold as many items as you like, but the items you have equipped affect your character. It determines how fast you can roll and run, but you are never forced to sell or drop any items, because you can hold unlimited of them. Secondly, one must adjust the current way one navigates the inventory. Unlike Dark Souls, Skyrim has an absurd quantity of items, so it would be essential to add ways to use filters to find what you need. Lastly, and most importantly, we have to reinvent the entire economy system. Your main source of income should be direct rewards after quests. You should not have to spend large amounts of time gathering and selling items and going back and forth between merchants. I still think it should be possible to sell valuables to get extra money. However, it should be to a much smaller scale where you do not end up spending so much time doing it, which is why the items you sell should be fairly rare. Accordingly, I believe completing missions and playing through interesting quests are a better way to receive gold. It is also more balanced, as you cannot bundle up on items and have to actually accomplish something to make money. It incentivizes gameplay instead of menu scrolling. Hey, and thanks for watching through my entire video. It means a lot to me, as this is my biggest project yet and I've invested a lot of time into it. I am also open for feedback on what I should do better next time, as this is my first real product. I have a lot of ideas, so there will be new content coming out in the future, so if you like what you saw, you can stay tuned for that. Also, on a last note, I want to inform you that all of my points, criticisms, praises, and general opinions are objectively right, and if you disagree, you can get fucked.